Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time zone. I'd like to welcome you to this webinar today. My name is Marcus Kimani, part of the Creating Markets Advisory team in the International Finance Corporation of the World Bank Group. And I'm very pleased to moderate this webinar today. The theme of our webinar is using business environment reform to build back better. And our specific topic today is digital reforms in regulatory delivery in the context of COVID-19 and beyond. So I'll just start off by giving us some quick ground rules. Number one, we kindly request that you keep your mic muted when not speaking, and likewise your video off when not speaking. Having said that, we do hope that this will be a highly interactive session. So we encourage you to ask questions and also make any comments that you may have. And to do that, you may raise your hand and we can pick you, and then you unmute yourself and make your comment or question, or you could also use the Zoom Q&A facility. If we are not able to respond to all the queries that we get, we will make effort to explore ways to respond even afterwards. Finally, this webinar is being recorded, and we hope to be able to share a link with you at the end of it to view the recording in case you'd like to pass it on or review it. Having said that, I'd like to invite Sylvia Saw to give us welcoming remarks. She's the co-chair of the Business Environment Working Group. So welcome, Sylvia. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. Good morning. Welcome, everybody. It's really a true pleasure for me to open this webinar. This is organized by the Business Environment Working Group, by the DCED, which since 2002 has been sharing good practices in business environment reform and promoting good practice as well as new approaches. This is part of a broader series that looks at business environment reforms in the context of COVID. And as we all know, and Marcus already hinted at that, if COVID has done one thing, it is definitely accelerating the trends towards digitalization and using new technologies in all spaces, in all sectors, from education to private sector and also public sector. But the trend to using new technologies in the public sector has started before, and it's really revolutionizing the approach to regulatory delivery. At this webinar this morning, as well as also to launch a report of the use of new technologies, which you can find in the link on the invitation, but also on the website at enterprisedevelopment.org, which covers case studies of over 60 countries and innovative use of new technologies ranging from AI to natural language processing to the Internet of Things. So if you're curious to hear more about that, please do take a look at the publication. Today, we'll dive into one of the case studies as also featured in the publication on Estonia. But I'll now pass the word back to Marcus to introduce the topic for today and our distinguished guest speakers. A very warm welcome again, and I wish you a very fruitful webinar.
Thank you very much, Sylvia, for those welcoming remarks. So I will quickly move to introducing the topic, and Sylvia has already covered some of that. So today, in today's world, regulators, that is governments, all sorts of government agencies, face many challenges. And I think most recently we've seen the COVID-19 pandemic and just how that has changed the landscape for governments as they try and deliver services to their citizens as well as their businesses. So there are new or emerging technologies and business models that impact rulemaking and regulatory delivery. That is making of laws as well as applying those laws and issuing services, for instance, business licensing, business registration, and so forth. So some of these technologies, as Sylvia has mentioned, include artificial intelligence, blockchain, crowdsourcing, remote sensing, Internet of Things, and many others. And what we find is that they create new opportunities for regulators to administer more innovatively as well as efficiently. For instance, they enable governments to gather data more efficiently, like in real time, analyze that data faster and more accurately, and consequently make better decisions. Part of the business model is the encouragement to collaborate for governments and regulators to collaborate with private sector, as this enables them to tap into the R&D that the private sector have done or are capable of doing, as well as be more sustainable together with the private sector. So having said that, there is the legal aspect, and today we will learn about how laws should be made to anticipate such new technologies and to avoid any legal obstacles that may crop up in the implementation of such technologies by governments. I think we are familiar with how some of these emerging technologies, for instance, artificial intelligence, have been challenged when used for certain aspects like fighting crime. So this should be interesting. It is also important to achieve a good balance between reducing the burden for citizens and businesses, as well as protecting their interests. And these are issues to do with data protection. So we do hope we will learn a lot to do with that today. So Sylvia has mentioned the publication that has recently been published by the Business Environment Working Group. And as she's mentioned, that is available for download, and we hope you will have a chance to have a look at it. So at this point, I'd like to talk about the two presentations that we will have today. One will be made by Mr. Goran Vranic, who leads the Digital Technology for Business Regulation Solution Area, also known as RegTech, within the World Bank Group. And he will talk, he will give us information about the RegTech work that they do, as well as touch on the publication and how it can benefit us. The second presentation will be made by Mr. Tambart Atma, who is the head of Estonia's Business Register Division at the Center for Registers and Information Systems. So he will let us know how Estonia has been using emerging technologies for regulatory delivery. And I think, as we know, Estonia is already a global leader in the use of tech for government to business and citizen services. So this promises to be quite interesting. What more could they be doing? After each presentation, we will have a Q&A session where we will attempt to answer all the questions that we will receive. And as I mentioned earlier, we will make effort to provide responses even if time does not allow. So I am based, and at a personal level, I am based in Nairobi, Kenya, and I support governments, regulators to implement technology for better services. And as you can imagine, many of the economies I work in that is sub-Saharan Africa, are fragile and conflict affected. So I'm very interested to learn how these emerging technologies can make regulatory delivery easier and more efficient in sub-Saharan Africa, where some of the challenges, as you can imagine, we face are low capacities within government, as well as low literacy, and even connectivity challenges just in the entire jurisdiction. So having said that, I'd like to invite Mr. Goran Vranic to make his presentation. Welcome, Goran.
Thank you, Marcus. Also, thank you, Sylvia, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for this opportunity to present our joint work and some new trends. Also, I would like to thank to Simon, Ella, and Jim for their support in publishing the work and preparation of this event. I would like to keep my presentation quite short to be more an introduction and also to allow time for questions as well as for Tambet's presentation that I'm also very interested in to hear. Also, I'd like to focus on 3 segments. The first segment is the regulatory technology solution area or RegTech and some recent revelations as of COVID-19. Second, I would like to present you the summary of this joint research we did with DCED. And finally, I will provide some information about some recent outcomes from the implementation of the World Bank Group operations, as well as some new plans. So when it comes to regulatory technology components, and regulatory technology, which is, of course, an application of emerging technologies to improve the way businesses manage regulatory compliance. So for the investment climate, the focus is on 3 main pillars. So the first pillar, which we call RegTech Agile Policy, is focused on regulatory solutions in terms of designing legal provisions to be flexible to allow innovations and investments, but also to safeguard health, safety, and the environment. Such design also has to account for possibilities of using emerging technologies as well as data availability. Some examples which are recent include the use of QR code for business licensing in Moldova, which we'll talk about a bit later, and also a great example from Estonia, Tambet will present. The second pillar is the digital transformation of G2B or government to business service delivery, including digital business entry, business licensing, and inspections. We also include here digital construction permitting. The approach we are applying here is often referenced as an integrated service delivery, which basically integrates the entire value chain through a single point of contact, also according to business life events. And third pillar, which we call RegTech data, can be even seen in the middle of this ecosystem and model, and basically is an enabler of the entire approach. It consists of, let's say, specifying minimum data requirements, also connected to the environmental impact of digital transformation, and then, of course, data management, including quality of data and data sharing. Important to mention is the international collaboration, which makes interconnection between developed and developing countries for knowledge transfer and faster development. If you go to the next slide, the context of COVID-19 accelerated digitalization significantly, which Sylvia already mentioned and emphasized. According to recent researches, including the one done by McKinsey, on average, the digital offerings of private businesses, private sector, basically leapfrogged 7 years of progress in a matter of months during the COVID-19 pandemic. Also MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, we are collaborating with, published several important pieces involving health dimensions into business models, including a very interesting piece on zone-based social distancing for balancing between reopening while ensuring the public safety. As for regulatory responses, the shift to digital basically happens overnight. Many jurisdictions are looking on how to benefit from the online services while enabling business continuity despite COVID-19 restrictions. That makes challenges of introducing and adopting digital solutions by government actual than ever, and prerequisites such as digital identity, cloud hosting, digital payments, and skills are becoming the top priority. In the next slide, I provided some insights about our research that we did with OECD immediately when the pandemic started. So our team here in DC mobilized and also involved our international community as well as the team of OECD based in Paris in order to understand opportunities of emerging technologies as well as regulatory and non-regulatory responses to fight COVID-19. An interesting finding is that AI, artificial intelligence solution Blue Dot, captured non-specific pneumonia and sent an alarm even before the virus is officially identified, and that was in December. There was also a very important initiative at MIT for privacy-preserved contact tracing. Some very interesting ideas have been developed there. The main conclusion was related to gaps in data sharing and overall data management, as well as privacy, and possibly lack of international guidelines, maybe even a standard in this domain. Now, if we go to the next slide, we will focus more on this piece we published together, DCED and World Bank Group, basically working hand in hand. So thanks to my colleague Shrikant, who did most of the work, as well as Stephanie and Andrea, who co-chaired the business environment working group at that time. This piece was finalized, I would say, even with a larger scope than preliminary envisioned. It developed a taxonomy and gathered information from more than 60 cases around the world in the use of emerging technologies for regulation delivery. In the next slide, you can see that the research revealed over 50 cases covering 21 jurisdictions in Asia, Americas, Australia, and Europe, showing a wide range of innovative technologies are being used to enhance the quality of service delivery across the entire regulatory life cycle. Largely, the cases show the use of emerging technologies in registrations, including businesses, licensing, land registration, then access to services through implementation of various chatbots, as well as for surveillance and inspections. The most used emerging technologies, artificial intelligence, including machine learning and natural language processing. In the next slide, you can see details on 6 case studies that we developed with more information, including Australia, USA, Canada, India, Estonia, and New Zealand. The use of emerging technologies ranges from the identification of public policy issues and regulatory stock scan in Australia, USA, and Canada, as well as for registrations and inspections in Estonia, India, and Canada. Tambet, of course, as we announced, will present more details about Estonia case study. In the next slide, you can see, I would say, a very simple matrix. This research informed, as well as the World Bank Group experience in these operations, which basically is mapping artificial intelligence tools such as natural language processing, machine learning, virtual agents, with stages and regulatory functions such as rulemaking, registration, licensing, and inspections. For example, if you go to business registration, you can see that business name selection, which is often quite challenging task to automate, can be supported with natural language processing, which Estonia did, and Tambet will present in a short time. Another example, if you go to business licensing, you can see that natural language processing can be used to identify and filter applicable business permits and licenses for desired business activities. This is something that we piloted in Croatia very recently, where we finalized a complete inventory of various business authorizations and minimum conditions in almost all sectors, all business sectors, by using artificial intelligence and natural language processing to automatically scan the regulations. In the next slide, as I would say, a new addition to literature from this joint DCED and World Bank research, you can see a maturity model, which provides a basis for the development of assessment and measurement tools for the application of artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies for regulation delivery. It addresses 4 dimensions. I can also say pillars, including policy considerations, institutional arrangements, the implementation of technology, and finally, the sustainability, which is very important for developing and fragile economies, the World Bank Group focuses on. In the next slide, you can see a direct application of this maturity model. And in the World Bank Group RegTech, we continue developing questionnaires and toolkits for the design of digital G2B platforms. And we supported Moldova in digitalizing business permits and licenses just before the pandemic, which is very interesting. No one at that time could imagine that such improved environment of business licensing would enable business continuity with the pandemic restrictions. And the platform enabled both businesses to apply online for various business licenses, as well as regulators to process permits remotely. From April 2020, the platform faced significant uptake with more than 70% of applications processed fully online without any physical presence. What I, for example, witnessed is the increased, of course, along with other areas, but this is quite interesting, an increased registration of boats in Moldova, regardless of being a landlocked country. Basically, the simplified and fully online procedure made foreigners to register their boats in Moldova. The direct outcome we measured is $12 million annually in compliance cost savings. Finally, in the next slide, I would like to present you some of the ongoing work. One is the detailed maturity model for e-construction permitting, which is currently in development, which basically goes into details and elaborates the maturity model for this domain, offering opportunities for developing and FCV jurisdictions to decide on the best approach and to basically design requirements for the implementation or for the automation of construction permitting system. And also another area that we are developing and focusing on is green by design, digital government to business, which basically aims to identify digital solutions designed in order to ensure green by design digital G2B in order to minimize carbon footprint. At this moment, we have the proposal developed for this work, and this is an area which was not significantly addressed before, and we have some very nice ideas on how we can complement. As also probably I would say known, the World Bank Group, Investment Climate and Business Regulation is quite present in this domain. We have more than 100 operations currently ongoing, and in more than 20 operations, we have significant RegTech components. This makes us very busy these days, as everyone is looking on how they can basically switch to digital solutions which are contactless and paperless in the shortest time. So that's all I plan to present for today. Marcus, I would like to return to you for questions and answers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Goran, for that wonderful and informative presentation. Before going to the audience, I'd like to ask you a question. I noticed in your slide, where the slide that had the heat map of countries where the case studies were taken, the over 50 case studies, we didn't have any in Africa, if I recall right. And one can perhaps argue that maybe Africa most needs to make its regulatory delivery more efficient and more streamlined. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on how maybe these new, emerging technologies could be perhaps applied more easily in Africa, and how they can also be sustained so that governments in Africa can benefit from some of these technologies. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. This is an excellent question. I would say that it doesn't have to necessarily mean that there are no solutions already being developed in Africa. These are the cases that we succeeded together, as I said, taking into account, let's say, resources we had for this research. Even from our experience, some countries in Africa even introduced, I would say, more modern solutions in certain areas, such as digital payments, than some developed countries. In any case, the idea from this research was, and from the entire international collaboration that we are trying to develop under RegTech, is to see how we can, let's say, create a connection between developed and developing and fragile economies in order to basically make that spill over. So to allow solutions which are basically already mature and developed by developed economies to be basically offered to developing economies, so they can basically transition faster in order to close this digital gap. However, those efforts are not small, and Marcus, you know them well, being involved, helping countries in sub-Saharan Africa for many years to basically implement digital solutions for G2B. And such efforts, let's say, require a lot of our presence in order to be a broker to find a feasible solutions which can basically work in those environments and which can also be sustainable in those environments. When it comes to the sustainability, as I have presented in the maturity model, it's one of 4 pillars that we are focusing on, along with policy, institutional, and technology. So we even put the operation and sustainability as 4th pillar to emphasize its importance. And some of, let's say, experience or lessons or good practice that we have identified through the research, we basically noticed that without quality, reliable, and updated data, the use of emerging technologies is quite limited. So the data strategies is something that we identified should be a focus from the beginning of such implementations. Then a long-term strategy and sustainable business models should be developed, as well as, let's say, models to share costs of implementation and operation across stakeholders. Also, I would say, subsidized by the government in certain pilot domains. And also what we identified as an opportunity are incentives for the private sector involvement, basically to pick up their knowledge and developments to support the public sector as well with the implementation of digital G2B. And for example, in Estonia, we have very interesting cases of hackathons. Tambet can talk a bit more. And also, it's important always, and also myself, I'm coming from developing country, born and worked there. So it's important always to measure benefits of the implementation. So you can always kind of present those benefits to decision makers, to measure them against expected outcomes and indicators in order to justify budget needs which are required for the maintenance and operation. Marcus, back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Goran, for that elaborate and very informative response. So I'd like to encourage the audience to ask any questions or make any comments on Goran's presentation. Please feel free to use, to raise your hand and we'll pick you and you can unmute yourself, or even to use the Q&A feature on Zoom. We'd be very happy to have your questions. So something else that was on my mind, Goran, is that, you know, we've seen that the implementation of technologies, particularly new and emerging technologies, comes with some risk. Like the case I think I had mentioned in the introduction, where we saw the UK police force being successfully challenged in court when they use artificial intelligence to basically facial recognition. And, you know, and one might wonder, some of these things are meant to make our environments and communities better. So what are some of the risks that could arise when governments and regulators try and implement these new emerging technologies, and what are some of the mitigations that they can take?
Thank you, Marcus. Let me try to be short for this question in order to, we can switch to Tambet and also hear from him some very interesting experience also regarding the risks that they have faced in Estonia. But let me provide you two, let's say, important points. One is again data quality and data management. So, for example, a mitigation strategy can be developed to deal with this issue from the onset of projects or changes, transformational changes. One example that we are, as the World Bank group, currently involved in is Jordan, where we are designing requirements for a new digital business registry fully integrated to the overall regulation delivery life cycle according to business life events. And in Jordan, we included the development of data strategy, or let's say a strategy in order to an approach to establish an integrated and updated business registry database from the beginning of the project. And we put a significant emphasis on that aspect of the project. And the second is, of course, I would say change management, which besides legal changes require institutional improvements and capacity development. Along with these, our experience shows that some legal options can help as well. And so for Moldova, we had interesting experience from introducing a legal provision of requesting QR code to be generated for every issued business permit through the digital platform. Such requirement basically made all regulators to switch as soon as possible to the new platform and to adopt technology, because it was a legal requirement to have a QR code generated by the platform, and only having such QR code would make the business permit issued by government regulators valid. Marcus, back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Goran, for those very useful tips. So I'd like to invite Chatbot at this point to make his very highly anticipated presentation. Welcome, Chatbot.
Marcus, and thanks, Goran, for the interesting presentation. And also thank you for inviting me. And because it's always good to share the experience and ideas with different people, because it also helps us to understand that either we are on the right path, maybe we should consider some changes in our roadmap and so on. And one of the things I wanted to mention when I was listening Goran's presentation regarding the COVID-19, I had like quite many meetings where people ask like, okay, how did the COVID situation change the people to government interactions in Estonia? I would say it didn't actually change that much, because we already had this IT infrastructure in place, and most of the government services were already online, and you could just use them. So it's like it has boosted some of the functionalities and services, but like to be built like more rapidly. But mostly it's business as usual in that sense. If we are thinking about like how the people interact with the government. So, okay, so I will start with my first slide, which I will open up a little bit the background and what are the main principles and building blocks of the e-government that we are following. So first up, strong electronic identity. This is basically, you can think about it as a key to use government e-services. Without the key, you cannot access these services, because the government don't know that you are you, and not somebody else who wants to play as you. So this is one of the main building blocks in e-governance. We have also opened up the idea to foreigners. We have this e-residency program, and they're actually this is meant that the foreigners can also make this electronic identity with what they can access to Estonian government e-services. So other thing we have is the X-Road as the unified data exchange platform. What is the reasoning behind this is that before the X-Road, we had already different electronical registries, and they changed the data also, but the problem was that they didn't use the same foundations. They had like different type of services, different security levels and so on, but it was a mess, because if you wanted to, for example, get the data from the population registry, you had to do one type of development. If you wanted to ask the information from the tax authority registries, then you had to do again different type of connection, and it was it wasn't very cost effective, as you can imagine. So our information system authority, which is the central organization to govern these central e-governance blocks as also electronic identity, came up with the idea to build the X-Road. And X-Road is, you can say it's just a secure way of changing the data between different registries. And also regarding the international cooperation, then this idea has come over the Estonian borders, because already, for example, Finland, Iceland, Faroe Islands are already using the same platform actually. They have rebranded it. It's with a different name in different country, but the technical base is the same. And we have this thing called X-Road Federation, and everybody can actually join with it. Only the thing is that if you join with this X-Road Federation, then you actually all the new functionalities that you develop for this platform, you must share them with other different federation members. So this is like this open source community. One of the principles that we are using is one-stop shop. That means we are trying to put as many different relevant services as possible into one step. For example, we have also added in the company registration step, we have also added the registration of the value-added tax number, and also registration of workers. For example, if you know already that your board members are going to get the salary, then you can already register these persons. So this is one of the things that we are keeping in mind, and later on I will a little bit opening up the idea how this one-stop shop concept can evolve into something bigger and like a greater thing. One other principle is one only principle. The idea behind it is that this is actually mandatory. That means mandatory for the different government registries, that they cannot ask the same information from the person twice. That means if the person presents their, for example, personal information to the population registry, then the tax authority or the business register cannot ask this information again. This for illustration, we are when the person is registering the company, which only thing that we ask is the ID code and first name and last name, and then we just get the rest of the information from the population registry. For example, the person address, which is also mandatory information for the business registry, but we don't ask it twice from the person, because we already know from the population registry data that this person lives there. And okay, so and other thing is that when we are changing the law in some areas, then we are always considering the technology. That means we are looking for the different innovative ideas that we can how we can cooperate these ideas into this law change, and how we can make it like easier for the people to use or like to fulfill this law. And as I already mentioned, with the X road, we have the open source, but we have also the open source principle and shared code base principle in Estonia, like all over different systems. For example, if we build some AI tool, then we share it on this repository. We have this Estonian national code repository where everybody can go and look different software pieces and use them. And actually, this is open up for everybody. So you just go there and you can get this. You can see what the different types of things are there. And already there are, I know, 2 different AI tools. One is called the Texta, which is text analysis tool that I know that they are using in court information system. They had to think that some of the documents that were made public, they had to manually remove the personal data from these court documents. These were like PDF documents. And it was like a lot of manual work. So this Texta tool actually helped to identify which parts are the personal information, and just like remove these or like blank these parts from this PDF. So in goes the normal regular PDF from the court information system, and out comes this edited PDF without the personal data. Another thing we had there is Chatbot, which is constantly evolving. At the moment, it's still, I think, in the pilot phase, but it's already usable. And I know some of the information systems in Estonia are already using it. And the last thing to like consider is the continuous innovation, because you can never be ready with your system. System always develops, technology always like advances, and you can always look for the better ways to do things and never think about like okay, oh, we have done this like this always, so just let's do it in this way. Maybe you should think like how can you do it in the better way. So even if you know that it's already a really good system to use, it can always be better. Okay, so next slide, please. Some of these things I mentioned in numbers. For example, we have 99% of Estonia residents have ID cards, and I forgot to mention earlier that the ID card is actually the only mandatory document that every Estonian must have. So this 1%, it's way under 1%. It's like 99.9% something is usually like these ID cards that are not valid anymore, because ID card life cycle or like ID card is valid for five years. And why it is 5 years? Because all of these encryptions and technology behind the ID card, in 5 years' time, it's old technology. So it also must be like renewed constantly. Also, 99% of the state services are already online. You can use them with your ID card, and yeah, this is good. For example, just to bring one of the examples, I just lately my driver's license was expired, and I got a notice to my email. I got the notice via SMS to my mobile phone that okay, this driver's license is not valid anymore. And but actually, I didn't have to do almost anything. I just had to click on the link in the email. Pay the state fee for the new driver's license, which was, I think, 10 euros or something like that. And a couple of days later, in my mailbox, there was this new driver's license. So it was easy. But, and to just again, like to mention this, that actually I don't need the driver's license. If I have the ID card with me, and the police stops me, then I can just present my ID card and show, okay, this is me. This is my ID card, and they can get everything online because they have this online computers in each police car, so they can actually know that either if I have the valid driver's license or not. So we have already 70,000 e-residents, which is quite a lot. The program started 4 years ago, yeah, and with 4 years we have 70,000 e-residents. It maybe in big country context it doesn't sound like, okay, 70,000, it's not that much, but if you think that in Estonia we have 1.3 million residents, then 70,000 is quite a lot, and yeah, we are quite proud of it. And they have registered 15,000 companies, which is almost 7% of the private limited companies in Estonia. Also, X-Road, which is like make the data exchange really fast in Estonia, has saved us, for example, 1,345 working years in 2020, and over 180 million X-Road requests has been done. How this working years saved is calculated is that they said, like, let's say if one request takes like for example, if you're using the paper and bringing one paper to one registry, from one registry to other registry, just to like ask the information and change it via paper, and this takes let's say around 5 minutes, then this is the like amount of work we have saved with just like this. Also, registering the private limited company is under 2 hours. This is a medium time. We have proved that this can be done a lot faster. We have actually one case when it was done under 18 minutes. So it's from the time started from the moment when the person logged in to the business registry, and it was stopped when registrar actually gave their e-signature and this company was like online and in registry, and it could be like found from our business registry online. So it was 18 minutes. Other thing, we just finished this the MICE project, which is one of the AI projects we have in business registry. This project is for court rulings, automated court ruling translation. The idea behind it is that all of the court rulings in Estonia are in Estonian because this is the like official language. And but since we have so many e-residents now and different companies registered by the e-residents, then we had to like find a way how to make their lives more easier when they get the court ruling for something that the court wants to like give them the information or ask the information from them via court ruling. Then they can actually read it and understand it what it says. So it was done. It finished in September, and actually. What I can do is since today we don't have that much time to show it actually online and working, I can share the, for example, GIF. I can make a GIF just to show it how does it work. And yeah, okay, yeah, I already mentioned that we have first AI-based tools in code repository, and we ongoing process is that we are doing this revision of the commercial code, and this also in this revision there are like a lot of changes that are allowing us to use more technology to make keeping the registry like more automated and easier to use. So in the next slide, I will talk about like in real life examples with like how can you use law and technology in cooperation that we have done and we have used. So First thing, how to use new technologies without changing the law. This is one of the things that should be considered if you're looking at your registry and your law that is applied to this registry. Then first thing, you shouldn't run into the into the office of the lawmakers, just to see maybe there are already some kind of things that you can do without changing the law. For example, one good example is the same this MICE project that I told you, this automatic court ruling translation. The problem with this was that at the beginning, lawyers said like, okay, we cannot just translate the court rulings and present them via official registry, because the problem was that this isn't like official translation. This is like just AI-based, neural network-based translation. So how can you say that this is like official? This is not translated by the sworn translators. So we just said, okay, every time the machine translates this court ruling, we just put a small sentence on top of each of these court rulings that this is not this is machine translated court ruling, and this is not an official translation. But the idea was to help e-residents. They get the indication what the registry keeper wants to tell them. What is maybe the problem with their company, or what data is missing from their company. But they can just look at this machine translated document and see, okay, yeah, they don't care if it is official or not. They just want to know what the registry wants from them. So this is one of the points. Other is again, like how can you maybe translate how can you automate the process without changing the law? Again, this is strongly related to the example that I brought up, that we just asked the data from the different registries, and the once-only principle that we cannot just ask the data twice. So if we want to get the data, then we can automate it and ask it from the different registry. If we already know that this data exists, and we have this data for the persons. And other thing is that when we are looking at the law and when we are looking at the systems, we are constantly thinking about the 80-20% rule. This is like a term we are using, that maybe we can solve 80% of the cases where the people get confused or or they say that this is really hard with the automatization without changing the law. And maybe there's only like 20% that we cannot do without changing the law. So we leave this 20%, but we solve this 80%. So it's a win either way. Yeah. So and next thing, technology is always considered when making the changes in the law. This is related to the point that we have a continuous innovation. For example, what is absolutely needed to be checked manually and what could be automated. Again, this is the part where we are seeing like what kind of data fields we cannot validate with a machine. And what kind of data fields we need to actually absolutely check manually. A good example is that registering the private limited company in Estonia via company registration portal, where there are like a lot of automated checks. Only thing that the registrar must check for the registering of private limited company is the company name. Other things, already we have automated checks. We can check if the person is the person who he or she says he or she is. And we know we get the address from the address registry. We send for the email, we send the verification link, so they must click it to verify that they have the access to this email account, and so on and so on. But the company name is one of the hardest things to check automatically, because there are like a lot of different rules regarding the company name. It cannot be too similar, but how can you say what name is similar to which name with a machine? Machine is like 0 or 1. Is it similar or not similar? But you must also take account how it is pronounced, how it is written. Is it also related to some trademarks, and so on and so on? There are like quite a long list of different rules, and so this is the thing we're currently doing, is that we are exploring the way how we can actually also automate this company name check automatically. For this, we had this hackathon that Goran mentioned in his presentation, that we presented the idea, and then we got a partner from the private sector who just said, okay, we'll try to do. We had 48 hours. It was called Garage 48, this hackathon, and then after this hackathon, we had this already, like it was kind of working prototype, I said, because the problem with the machine is that for machine to learn, you must have a lot of quality data sets. For example, for the name registration case, we calculated it was around 60,000 set of names for training, and 10 to 20,000 for the training, the AI. But the problem is that if we had the court rulings in machine readable form, that means that we had the texts of court rulings in our system. Then we had all of the company names, machine readable form, but we didn't have the link between the court rulings and the names. That means we know that this company were registered, and they have had this name, and we have this court ruling. That means that something was missing, or something is not there, but we don't know what was actually the reason, because the reason is handwritten. And that means that all of these all of this data in the data set should be, let's say, half manually labeled to machine understand what's up with this name. Actually, is it that it was not suitable because of this or that reason, and then the machine can learn. So we are currently in this phase that we are trying to come up with a great idea how we can label all of this data in a possible way. After we have this data labeled, then it's much easier to actually do it and put it into a live system. So what else? Leave room for the future. We are, for example, this revision of the company law. We try to put as many paragraphs into this new revised business law that allow us to do as much as possible in the system automatically. And already in our commercial law has this kind of flexibility. For example, I just wrote down this sentence from one of the this is actually the section of one of the paragraphs that says that if the technical capacity exists, the correction of an entry specified in subsection blah 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 of this section shall be carried out automatically. So it gives us already, like, if we have this capacity, then we can do this. And if we think about if we are changing the law and we write as many these kind of sentences where we can actually see that maybe in the future we can automate it, so it will leave us the room for the future. Then we don't have to rush into Minister of Justice and say, okay, we have this great idea, but we cannot do it because the law says that it must be checked manually. But so this is one of the approaches we are constantly looking into. And actually, I searched from the Estonian commercial law, and the word automatically or automatic is mentioned 9 times. So it's not much, but I hope in the future it's much more. Another thing is defining the missing links between the law for the better technical solutions. One of the example is that we have a little bit of trouble with board member meeting documents. That means for especially with non-profits, they're doing their meetings and they decide to change some data in business registry, but to prove that they have collectively decided to do these changes, they must present the meeting documents, and their quality is not that great. We have the templates and stuff like this in the system available, but still it's not like it's not that well structured, and mostly we get not very quality documents. That means registry keeper must ask some of the more specifications from the board members or whatever. So this is one of the problems, and this is the missing link. That means we want to actually build this thing called e-meetings system, where they can organize and make these protocols of the meetings automatically, and also present them to the registry. So if they are using this system, then we have the guarantee that we get the necessary information that we need for this type of meeting. Simplified processes in law. If you already have technology that supports it, for example, in company revision, there is this point that mentions company liquidation and deletion process. This is they want to make it more easier, because we have these. In this process, there are different parties. For example, tax authority that gives us the information if this company has some tax issues or not, and if they don't have, they can just there are more easier ways to liquidate or delete this company. So, but we can already ask it via X-Road, but we cannot do this process fully automatically, because some parts are a little bit missing. So we have the technology platform, we have the X-Road, we have the X-Road services, but the law doesn't actually allow us to do some kind of deletions or liquidations automatically, even if we could do this. So in revision, we hope to solve this problem, so it could be either fully automatic or at least almost fully automatic process. Then one of the parties map down the life cycle of legal entity or a person. It could be also just a person life cycle, and see the big picture. What can you automate, simplify, or and basically this is called event-based services. As I mentioned earlier, we have this one-stop shop concept, but this is just for the one step of the in the life cycle. But life cycle is a whole. I mean, from the company registration to the company deletion, or as a person's case, it's from the birth of the person to death of the person. So there are different steps on this in this life cycle. And what we are currently doing is that we are trying to put more and more of these steps into one system. That means if a person goes to this system, they can do different steps in this system, so they don't have to bounce between the different IT systems. And last thing is that Goran also mentioned that there are like some kind of there could be like threats, like using too much IT, or and you must mitigate these risks and consider the safeguards in law and regulation and so on. So good example is that it's written in the law that, for example, person's data owner is the person himself. So and also there's this rule: if somebody asks person's personal information, this person can log into the Estonian national portal and see who has asked his information and why. That means if somebody asks my information from the population registry, I can see actually this ledger that, okay, this registry asked my information, and if I have any questions, I can go and ask from them, why did you ask my information? Was it really necessary? What did you do with my personal information? So this gives like a transparency for the person's information. Other thing is that we have also we have this project called Data Embassies. That means if something bad should happen in Estonia, then we have also foreign data, we call this data embassies, which are basically like buildings that are basically work as embassies. And this is like a Estonian ground, and there are like server rooms, and we just make the copies of the data to there. So it's like a constant like copying the data and securing the data. The other thing is again like X-Road, which is an audited platform. You don't share the information via, I don't know, email or just send an Excel. You must ask it via X-Road if you want government to government, and it's audited and secured and so on. System-wise, we have this thing we are doing constantly are the OWASP tests, which are security tests. That means different types of penetration testings. Either it could be hacked or not hacked, and we have this rule that says we have 13 years. The system life cycle is 13 years maximum. That means after 13 years, this system is old, obsolete, and should be replaced with a new one. That means actually the building starts before 13 years. That means after 13 years, the new system must be already online. And of course, constant monitoring. We have and bad scenario training. That means we are doing quite many times in a year. We are doing different types of switching to second site, which is second server room. For example, if one server room collapses, burns down, or whatever happens, then we have like different server rooms where we can just switch, and and that's it. So it takes around 20 minutes or something like that to switch from one server room to another server room, and this is only the downtime is like 20 minutes if really bad things should happen with a building, let's say the fire or whatever else thing could happen. So yeah, that's it from my side. I think I went a little bit over time. I hope we have time for the questions, and finally let's just see solution instead of problems. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chatbot, for that that wonderful and presentation full of very innovative things and ideas. So to our attendees, I'd like to once again encourage you to raise your hand and ask any questions, or use the Q&A feature. We'd be very happy to try our level best to give you a comprehensive response. So, and let me look if there are any. None raised so far. Maybe I can ask you one question I had. You know, just as I mentioned, I work in sub-Saharan Africa with several governments, and you know, I'm just wondering if Estonia has already implemented all the things that you've described, and I'm sure that's you know, just a fraction. How will and you've also talked of continuous innovation. So how do you see, for instance, company registration looking in Estonia 5 years from now?
Thanks for the good question. As I mentioned, we are currently exploring these life cycle events. So, for example, in my mind, how it should look like in 5 years, for example, is that I, as a person, log into the company registration portal or whatever else portal there could be in 5 years. And then the portal knows who I am, gets the information from different registries, and then actually recommends some steps or makes suggestions. Okay, you don't have a company. Maybe you want to register the company because you entered into this portal. You surely want to register the companies. Here are the most popular company types. Also, maybe suggest these types of companies are hot right now. So maybe if you are starting up this type of company, you will be more successful. Maybe, and if you and these are the areas that are not really great at the moment, for example. So there are they could be done a lot of automatization, AI procedures, stuff like this into this life cycle logic. So yeah, and maybe if you already had the company, then they can suggest okay, here are some let's say here are some national programs for these types of companies. You can get maybe some starting funds for this company. You have, for example, you have this type of company, and in your area there are 50 exactly this kind of companies. Are you sure you want to be business? Because there's huge competition, and are you really are you really sure that maybe you could explore some innovations or stuff like this? So it would be like a helper slash registry slash something else. So it's like a yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Wow, very innovative indeed. I see we have one question in the chat. Let me read it for you. And this is directed to you, Chatbot. How much time did Estonia need to align all state institutions to a unique standard and have all public services under the one-stop shop? You know, you mentioned 99%, which is quite high.
Yeah. How much time? I would say that it took around 10 years, maybe. The main a kickoff or the explosion in that sense was with the internet boom in early 2000s. And then we got ourselves this ID card, and also extra platform was built. So these were actually the things that help us get where we are at the moment. So again, you must have these basic building blocks in place to open up for the innovation. Because if you don't have these key elements, then it's really hard to do it, and it's more expensive. That means if you, again, if you're not using this unified data exchange platform, then everybody can run in different direction with the platforms and technology that they are using. So for that we have, but for that not to happen, we have this information system authority in Estonia. So this is their main responsibility are these building blocks, developing these building blocks for the different registries. I don't know if that answered the question. I hope it did. So.
Yeah. Yes. I think that was a great response, and yeah, you also talked of the building blocks, which is good to keep in mind. So attendees, please feel free to ask questions. As we wait for another question, I'd like to build on that question that we've received, and it was on time, but I just want to ask you about cost. And while it might not be meaningful to ask you, how much it costs, what I think I would ask is, how would you compare the cost of of that level of technology and automation versus maybe just working traditionally without having made that investment? Basically, was it worth it?
Yes, definitely. Because we must consider not only the time that the registrars are spending, but we also must consider the time that entrepreneurs, regular people are spending to communicate with the government. So all of that, the time before, for example, the company registration before we did it online, available online and easy like this, it was around 5 days. I know it's not much, but if you compare it with 2 hours or 18 minutes, so it's quite a lot. And this actually has reduced the cost. I mean, when the company registration portal, for example, went live, then it reduced the overall cost already at the beginning around 15%. No, not 15, 50%. So half. It was already reduced the cost half. But we have done further innovations, and it's a little bit hard to already at the moment compare with the beginning years. How much did it cost when it was fully on paper to the moment at the how it is at the moment, because now we have more companies also if you compare it with the beginning years. So, but I think it's the cost savings are huge. I mean, if we were just thinking about the money, it's huge, but also overall satisfaction of using these services, how easy it is. This is other type of benefit we get, and this cannot be always measured in money.
Okay, thank you very much for that response. I'm conscious that time, we are probably not so time good, but still, I'd just like to find out if there are any questions from the audience. And if not, I would like to move to the summary and conclusions, just scrolling through the attendees. I don't see any. Oh yeah, we have a question on the chat for you, Tambat. Have you measured and have you done an environmental impact assessment or measurement of digitalization in Estonia?
Well, to be totally honest, I know that there are studies regarding this matter, but I haven't read them that thoroughly. It's not actually my field to see, and I don't actually know, but I know that there has been some kind of studies, of course. And if you're thinking about that, currently the registers doesn't accept anything on the paper. We have 3 different business register doesn't accept anything on paper. I must be precise. We have 3 different channels, and they are all electronic. We have a company registration portal, we have e-notary, and we have this thing called company registration API, which is basically the easy version of API services that the private sector can use to build their own mini company registration portals. So, but if you think about that, everything was on paper before, and now nothing is on paper. So already the amount of paper that is that is not presented to the registry is the win. And yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that response. We have another question on the chat. It reads, are there any AI tools Estonia used in data migration?
Well, can you be more specific? I mean, what do you mean by that? The migration from which to where?
I will imagine that means, and perhaps this question comes from, sub-Saharan perspective, where governments, before such automation, you probably had manual systems, paper-based systems, as you've mentioned, maybe some very antiquated legacy systems. So now to get the repository of businesses or anything on the online, good practice data set.
Well, since it was a little bit like before the AI was a hot topic, even before that, we already had all of the main data migrations done, and all of the future we have, or the near future data migrations we have done, these are just some easy scripts written in a couple of hours. So we haven't used, to answer this question, we haven't used to do it in the huge on the huge data sets. But nationwide, I think either it was health system or something like that. I think they have used actually some kind of AI tools. But again, I can look into this a little bit more, and maybe I can just answer it via email, something like that.
Oh, okay, that is that's noted.
Sorry, I see that there is this another question that or the continue of this same question. Is Estonia, like many other countries, a lot of physical documents? How can AI be used to clean up and migrate? Yes, we scanned them in. This was manual work. This was manual work. This scanning the documents before, because we had some old documents that were not scanned in, so it was done manually. And how can AI be used to clean up and migrate? I would say that in some of the cases, there was some parts of it that was that if I'm now thinking about how we should do it now, if we had this paper archive, I would look into this these AI tools that can get information from the handwritten documents, for example, some registration codes and company names, and they could separate these from the scanned documents. That means if we could do this, then there shouldn't be any manual entering of these documents is for this company. So that means before, when we did it 10 years ago, or even more, but then it was okay, this document is for this company. We had the company this basic metadata was already since 90s online in our servers, but these big documents and stuff like this was manually scanned in, but and it was attached to this company which these documents belong to. But now I would say that if these documents contain some kind of indication, under which company these documents belong, then it would be easier. Then you could just scan in them in bulk, and then the machine could just get the information. Okay, this document goes for this company, this document goes for this company, and so on and so on. So it could be one of these processes when you can actually use AI, I think. But this just from. I hope it answered for the question.
Well, I think your response was great, and I should mention that problem presents itself a lot in Africa, where we want to digitize handwritten documents. So I would even like to reach out to you offline, not part of this webinar, just to understand a bit more about those tools. I think they will add a lot of value, because it's something that really presents a challenge for us. Okay. There seem to be no additional questions. So considering the time, I will quickly move to the summary and conclusions. I think there is a lot I could say about what we've learned, but let me just try and be very brief, since I believe we've all had the materials. But I think just listening to some of the case studies that on how emerging technologies can be used has been very enlightening. And that is in rulemaking and regulatory delivery. And some of the things, particularly drilling down to Estonia, hearing things about how you use data embassies, how you use, you do automatic name checking, using artificial intelligence. I thought that was really, really profound. For instance, that name reservation. Some of the solutions I've come across is the government developing like 1,000 pre-approved names. Then applicants just choose some of them. So you see, while they do cut the time it takes to get an approved name, but you likely register your business without your own name, So I thought that was really, really profound. As we conclude, I'd like to leave us with what I feel are some potentially new areas of research in the use of emerging technologies for better and more efficient regulatory delivery. One of the key areas is green by design. What principles, how can we ensure that digital government services are green by design? Tambert, you've talked of going paperless, so I think there's a lot to explore there. One other thing is, what are the minimum data requirements for business, for common regulatory activities such as business registries, licensing, and even inspections? And finally, about digital identity. And what digital identity and digital signature is required for efficient digital government to business services. Is one possible area cloud-based digital identity? So having said that, I'd like to leave us with those questions to think about. This is still a growing area in regulatory reform. So I hope you have all found this webinar as beneficial and enlightening as I have. I would like to, on behalf of the panelists, to thank all the participants for their time and questions and attention. Thank you very much, and bye.